Researchers estimate around 200,000 Australians are addicted to smoking cannabis, but there's currently no drug available that can help them quit.
A national research team says they've had promising results in their search for drugs to wean addicts off dope. Jan Copeland from the National Cannabis Prevention and Information Centre joins us now. Jan, thanks very much for coming in. This is such a fascinating topic because I think we're of that generation where we have grown up, where people started smoking cannabis, marijuana, as a sort of a recreational thing that they thought wasn't doing them any harm.
Yes, and that's certainly still the prevailing view, unfortunately, that it is harmless and that you can't become addicted. And like alcohol, most people don't have a problem. But of those that do, some just can't manage to quit on their own. And that's why this is really exciting. It's an important milestone on that journey to getting a drug that's approved to help people who've really struggled to quit cannabis.
Before we talk about that, before you tell us about that, tell us about the studies that you've done and the demographic of the I guess you call them patients that are now coming after a couple of decades of use and presenting with issues, and they want to actually kick it.
Yeah, well, we've done a number of studies over the years, but this is the first time we've had a drug that would help people actually get through that withdrawal process. And the participants on average were 35 years old. They were more likely to be male, about 3/4 of the sample were male. They started smoking when they were about 15. So by the time they got into the study, they'd been smoking very heavily, almost certainly daily, for 20 years. They tended to be single and the majority were unemployed. So they were atypical of the average, cannabis-dependent person. But, they were really struggling by the time they came to us.
If you reach that stage in your mid-30s, you're smoking dope for 2 decades, it's a sharp fall from there, isn't it? It's a really slippery slope.
Absolutely, and that's why they tended to have lost their relationships, that they weren't doing as well in their vocation as they imagined. They had hopes and dreams when they were 15, 16, 17, but we know that cannabis really interferes with educational attainment and how people do later in life.
And it's how it intervenes with the medical, your brain development, the effect on your own ability to just get up and be active. Let's talk about this drug. What exactly have you uncovered? How does it work?
It's a new class of drugs. It's got a very horrible name, nabiximols.
Let's work on that.
Yes. It's marketed as Sativex. That's the brand version that we used. And it's really interesting because it's a pharmacologically pure version of the whole cannabis plant, and it has the THC, which is what the drug they're withdrawing from, but it also has another drug, the so-called good cannabis, CBD, which has the opposite effects. It reduces anxiety and reduces the psychotic type symptoms that people get. And the great thing is that it's not smoked, it's a mouth spray. And so it just dampens down the symptoms so people can get through that horrible craving and feelings that they get, so they can engage and get the most out of the medical care and the counselling that's also available.
Would the same argument exist with that one it does with methadone, with people trying to get off heroin but using methadone?
Absolutely, that's the perfect analogy, even more with nicotine replacement therapy for tobacco smokers. It's really the same principle. You just give them a small manageable dose so they can get through that period of withdrawal and move on to long-term abstinence from the drug.
I'm interested in what you're talking about, though, in terms of making them feel more able to deal with daily life, because this is what you see in long-term cannabis users, that they find it hard to be motivated, that anxiety, that some of the mental illness that comes with that. Is it prolonged enough to then help take over with the psychologist, help getting back into life in a more normal fashion?
Well, this was an initial study with people. We actually admitted them to hospital. So they only got 6 days of the drug. And I agree with you. I think probably longer would be better, and we're trying very hard to get another study funded to look at that. But we were really encouraged because this drug halved the length of the withdrawal. It really reduced the severity of it. And as a result, 85% of those that were receiving the drug were still in treatment at the end of treatment, whereas only half of those who got the placebo, they dropped out because they couldn't manage the cravings and the irritability and the sleep problems, and they just really needed to go and use again, unfortunately.
So how bad is cold turkey for cannabis users?
Well, for most
compared
people,
to other drugs, I know it's
it's very similar to tobacco,
Yeah.
for example. People think, oh, tobacco, that's easy, I've given it up. Yes, I've given it up 1,000 times because actually it's quite hard to maintain abstinence, and people tend to try 2 or 3 times. And there's this small group with cannabis and with tobacco that just need that extra pharmacological help.
And what about the changes in cannabis in the last 20 years? Because it has changed. The producers would mix different chemicals, and it's become more of a chemically enhanced substance. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually did a study last year which found that on average street cannabis in New South Wales has got 15% THC, which is what in Amsterdam they class it as a hard drug. It's really a very potent drug, and they've bred out that other CBD that I mentioned, which balances out the effects.
Yeah.
That's gone from street cannabis.
And why have they done that? To keep people addicted?
Because people want to buy the really potent because they get more bang for their buck.
Fascinating stuff, Jan. Great work, and thank you very much for coming to tell us.
Well, if people want more information, 1-800 30 40 50.
30, 40, that's easy to remember.
Yes, or check our website.
Good on you. Thanks,
Okay.
Jan.
Thanks, Jan.